Coming to business models and strategy. You guys are strategic, I guess. Question is, what's the normal way of strategizing into those worlds? How do you create growth engines? How do you beat the competition? How do you create disruption? So corporates have been doing this for years, right? So the old way of doing it, or the typical way of doing it, is that every now and then we get a periscope out. Every few years, maybe we hire a consultant, a pretty expensive one, and then we ask the question, who are we? What do we want to be? What is our strategy going to look like? We call this the strategy tea party. And it's a tea party because everybody celebrates. It's great. We're sitting down, we're thinking about the future, we're talking about what's missing, and it's really, really interesting. We invite everyone in. The usual suspects are the finance and product and R&D, innovation, sales, marketing, and other guys, and we're all together sitting down. Great. Existing market, resegmented market, new markets. But while we're strategically planning, one thing happens. We spend a lot of time on planning, months and months, and then we talk about organization structuring, and then we talk about work plans that we need to execute. What's the problem with that? Well, I guess you know by now. The amount of risk of sitting inside the building thinking about business plans in a refined, detailed manner that are unproven and have no evidence of, are we solving the right problems? Do they really exist? Are there other solutions that are getting the job done? Is a big problem. And one of the main things that we're going to show you in this course is that we're going to replace two words here. Planning and execution are going to be exchanged with design and validating, design and testing. So strategic planning, that's probably not what we're going to do with this course. But here's the other problem. So companies innovate by, new products, new services, new technologies. So we fall in love with those technologies and products. Everybody loves to build a new product. They actually love something even better. There's a problem with this process as well. It may sound, it may feel very neat, warm, and so forth. However, the same kind of phenomena here kind of repeats itself because the focus here is about making ideas a holy grail. So we love ideating, tons of ideas, hackathons, competitions, whatever you have in place. And then we're developing, prototyping. We just build something in the sake of building. And the greatest addictive, one thing we like to get to is launch. Let's just launch something. Let's just tear that ribbon so that we're able to be proud of something. The main question would be, what's the problem here? So there's a pattern you're probably seeing. As we spend more time in building stuff, we fall in love with that stuff. And the risk is that we cannot validate whether this stuff is relevant or not. So ideating and launching, it sounds, it feels, and it is groovy, and it's fun. But is it bringing us that growth engine that we were talking about? Is it beating the competition to a point where they're no longer relevant? Is it creating a new market? I'm not sure. So the level of risk keeps on rising here as well. And the main problem with those two methods or approaches is that there's a big gap that we have here is between those two worlds. One, the corporate strategy planning, which is, okay, we're talking about our strategy, who we want to be. And then there's the product and service innovation. All right, we're going to bring a lot of products, a lot of services, and they're going to become growth engines, and we're going to answer that strategy. But that hole is very, very hard to gap. And the one thing that we need to remember is that there is no product or service that could become a growth engine unless it's relevant, desired by customers, meaning it's answering problems that really exist, specifically golden problems. It's not feasible in the sense that we could actually get something out in the market and learn from our mistakes, but also it has to be worth our time. It has to be viable to a point where we actually make a decision, whether we are solving customer problems, but it's not worth our time. We can build it, but it's not relevant to customers. So, one of the greatest statements that I really love is from this guy, Steve Blank. Steve Blank is a seasoned entrepreneur. And after 8 exit events, he became a very famous person worldwide because he is considered to be the father of the lean startup methodology, which is what we'll be talking about through this course. And Steve said, companies and ventures don't fail because they couldn't build a working product. That's a big idea. Everybody could build something. That's not the problem. With the resources, talent, the amount of information and knowledge that we have today, everything is possible eventually. But most ventures, most ideas, most companies, most startups fail to develop relevant customers and nail their business model. And that's the big challenge that business innovation is all about. So for companies, for established companies, it's a little bit of a challenge, and the reason is we live at Siemens in the ambidextrous mode. What does that mean? It means that a lot of our time is spent on improving existing business models, existing value propositions, and existing products. It's about execution, ruthless execution. We need to send quotes out, we need to visit customers, we need to write code, we need to develop hardware, and so forth. The other part of this ambidextrous mode is about reinvention. And reinvention is really hard for the corporate life because of the execution mode, because we're talking about the search mode, which is totally different. We're going to get to that later. But just before we sign off on this part, I want you to remember one thing important. For any product or any value proposition or any business model to become successful, it has to meet that sweet spot of innovation, which is where desirability meets feasibility meets viability. Now let's watch a case where a company totally in a different space than we are at had made this happen.